Okay. Right. Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to this virtual informal meeting of council. Reminding everyone, including members, to mute their microphones unless you are speaking, and please only use the chat function for may I speak, MIS. Don't use yellow hands, just use chat function. Thank you. As normal, when we are voting, I will take the most likely scenario and ask for votes either against or abstention, or if I anticipate that the motion will fall, either votes for or abstention. Joe, could you call out the roll call, please, and also give us any apologies for absence? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I'll just read out the councillor's name, so please just say yes if you're here. Rob Appleyard.
Yes.
Tim Ball. Tim, are you here? Sarah Bevan.
Sorry,
yes.
Present.
Okay, thank you. Sarah Bevan, yes. Colin Blackburn.
Yes.
Alison Bourne.
Yes.
Shelley Bromley.
Yes.
Neil Butters.
Yes.
Vic Clark.
Yes.
Sue Craig.
Yes.
Paul Crossley. Okay, come back to that. Jerry Curran.
Present.
Chris Dando.
Present.
Jess David.
Present.
Tom Davis.
Present.
Sally Davis.
Present.
Doug Deacon.
Present.
Winston Duguid.
Yes.
Mark Elliott.
Present.
Michael Evans.
Yes.
Andy Furs.
Yes.
Kevin Guy.
Present.
Alan Hale.
Present.
Liz Hardman.
Yes.
Steve Hedges.
Here.
Joel Hurst.
Yes.
Lucy Hodge.
Yes.
Duncan Hounsell.
Yes.
Sean Hughes.
Present.
Dr. Jackson.
Present.
Grant Johnson.
I'm here.
Dr. Kumar.
Here, please.
Hal McPhee. Okay. Ruth Malloy.
Yes.
Paul May.
Yes.
Matt McCabe.
Yes.
Sarah Moore.
Yes.
Robin Moss.
Yes.
Paul Myers.
Yes.
Lisa O'Brien.
Yes.
Yes. Michelle O'Doherty.
Present.
Barrett Pancania.
Present.
June Player.
Yes.
Thank you. Vic Pritchard.
Yes.
Amanda Rigby.
Yes.
Dina Romero.
I'm here.
Mark Roper.
Yes.
Richard Samuel.
Present.
Bruce Shern.
Here.
Brian Simmons.
Yes.
Alistair Singleton.
Present.
Sean Stevenson McGall.
Present.
Andy Waite.
Yes.
Karen Walker.
Here.
Sarah Warren.
Present.
Karen Warrington.
Yes.
Chris Watt. Ryan Wills.
Yes.
David Wood.
Present.
Joanna Wright.
Yes.
And so I'm just checking again. Is Paul Crossley here? Okay. And Hal McPhee. Chris Watt. Okay, that's fine. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. Do we have any declarations of interest, please?
None notified to me in advance, but if any councillor has one they need to declare now, they need to speak up. Thanks.
Thank you. And if any councillor finds as the meeting progresses that they have a conflict of interest, will they please flag it up straight away? Regarding the minutes, can we just note them to recommend for approval to council tomorrow? We're not required to approve them, just note for approval. In order to make it very clear to members of the public who might be listening to this evening, I would read the following statement. Due to a desire to retain a level of social distancing after restrictions have lifted, we are holding this informal virtual council meeting to enable all councillors to take part. The comments and indicative decisions from this meeting will help inform the physically reduced quorum decision-making meeting tomorrow on the 18th of November 2021 at 4 p.m. in the afternoon. We will review this approach for any future council meetings in line with government and health guidance at that time. Thank you. There is no urgent business that has been brought to my attention, so we move to statements from the public. And the first person is Ellie Mayer. Ms. Mayer, please.
Good evening. I would like to speak today in support of the much needed carbon tax motion. Man-made climate change is intensifying at an alarming rate, and while many of us are desperately aware of the need for urgent action to cut greenhouse gas emissions, the world's largest polluters continue to operate with few restrictions. In recent years, rather than intervening against the biggest emitters, the emphasis for preventing climate meltdown has been on the individual. We should fly less, we should eat less meat, reduce, reuse, recycle. Undoubtedly, individual sacrifices we continue to make have great value, but where are the movements to stop the world's worst polluters? It is acknowledged beyond doubt that fossil fuels are driving climate change, and so seemingly the solution is simple. We must stop using fossil fuels. We must transition to a greener society. Since 1988, 3/4 of global emissions have been produced by just 100 companies. It is these companies that need to act, and we must push them in the right direction. Between 2018 and 2020, BP and Shell, two British companies, which together produce more than 1.7 billion tonnes of greenhouse gases a year, avoided paying a single penny in corporation tax on oil and gas from the North Sea. Meanwhile, they claimed tax relief of almost 400 million and paid their shareholders more than 44 billion in dividends. There is currently zero incentive for these companies to leave oil and gas in the ground where it belongs. It's estimated that in the UK alone, we will be responsible for approximately 800 million tonnes of carbon dioxide emissions this year. We need a mechanism to reduce emissions quickly and effectively. A comprehensive carbon tax would be the lever to drive the change we need. A carbon tax would target all air polluters, particularly energy and oil companies.
1 minute remaining.
Thank you. It would finally render coal, oil and gas financially unviable as affordable energies rise to take their place. A carbon tax that applies to fossil fuel emissions could comfortably finance a dividend that would prevent the poorer members of society being hit with higher costs. It could be used to help society transition to a carbon-free future and to help the UK become a genuinely equal society. A carbon tax is a win-win for both climate and for social justice. There are no technical or economic barriers stopping us acting against climate change, just a lack of political will. In 2019, the Bath and North East Somerset Council declared a climate emergency, pledged to make the area carbon neutral by 2030. This cannot be empty political rhetoric. We have run out of time. The time to act is now, and the time for a carbon tax is now. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mayer. Councillor Guy, do you have any factual questions?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Ellie, but no factual questions.
Thank you. Councillor Pritchard, do you have any factual questions, please?
No factual questions, but thank you, Ellie.
Thank you. Councillor Walker, do you have any factual questions, please?
Ellie, thank you for your statement, but no factual questions.
Thank you. Councillor Moss, do you have any factual questions, please?
Thanks for your statement, Ellie. I'm sure you'll enjoy the debate later on, but no factual questions.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. The next speaker is Nicole Patel. Mr. Patel, please. Mr. Patel? I'm sure I saw you somewhere. Mr. Patel, would you like to speak now, please?
Chair, I think he left.
Okay. Right. Okay, we will move on to the next council person to address council, and that's Mr. Adam Reynolds. Mr. Reynolds, please.
The council has declared a climate and nature emergency and has committed to a 25% reduction in road miles driven by 2030. To put this into context, 60% of car journeys in Bains are under 5 miles, but only account for 20% of the road miles driven. This is an extremely hard nut to crack. The government, through the Active Travel Fund, is providing the council yearly with around £1 million in funding for school streets, cycle lanes and low traffic neighbourhoods. The government has also provided the West of England Combined Authority with 540 million of sustainable transport settlement. This will deliver protected cycle lanes along the A4, A367 and A37. The settlement also provides 60 million for further cycle infrastructure and 100 million for livable neighbourhoods across the region. With 20 million levelling up fund being provided to each constituency, so 40 million across Bains, and Bains being a level 2 council in terms of this the levelling up fund, the bids that Vera Hobhouse and Jacob Rees-Mogg need to champion will score highly only for transport schemes. I have already approached Jacob with my MP and proposed the North East Somerset Greenways network. The new council administration has bid 890k for a politically easy resurfacing of the existing traffic-free Rainbow Woods walking, wheeling and cycling route, with no effort made to connect it to Ralph Allen School or the Coombe Down Fox Hill communities. This new administration has also stopped the delivery of a trial strategic North Road route against the rules of the Active Travel Fund, which is likely to result in the Department for Transport reducing general funding for the council. The previous Lib Dem administration under Councillor Dina Romero had a much better strategic transport vision, in my opinion. Sadly, the opposition Conservative group is demanding the livable neighbourhoods be abandoned, that a probably legal required shift to CASD, which includes older cars, not be made, and has completely failed to tackle this administration's Bains means Bath and no one else approach to transport, while directly going against their own government's national policies. The council has just advertised for a head of transport strategy, while WECA, final local walking and cycling infrastructure plan, is still missing the regionally strategic cycle network map required by the consultation report and a vital planning tool for every council and developer in the region. Given the 200+ million to be spent on sustainable transport in Bains in the coming 5 years, it appears that neither councillors or officers have any clear strategic plan for this region. The result of this is that tribal politics directly impact the ability of this administration to act strategically and develop and deliver a 9-year plan to reduce road miles driven by 25%. Solving this is relatively simple. I am asking the council to set up a cross-party climate emergency transport board where any councillor can attend, supported by council executives and invited experts. The role of this board will be to develop and deliver the necessary 25% reduction in road miles driven by 2030. We do not have time for blah, blah, blah politics. We need decisive, bold, cross-party action year on year, and the current tribal nature of our politics and the election cycle simply fail Bath and North East Somerset. Please urgently fix this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reynolds.
You're welcome.
Councillor Guy, do you have any factual questions?
Thank you, Madam Chair, but no factual questions.
Thank you. Councillor Pritchard, do you have any factual questions? You are muted, Councillor Pritchard.
Can I ask Mr. Reynolds, Adam, do you think it would be more appropriate to stall the low traffic neighbourhood schemes until such time as Clevedon Bridge is open and fully operational?
Sorry, Councillor Pritchard, that's asking for an opinion. It's not a factual question. I'm sorry. Do you have a factual question with regard to?
No, thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Walker.
Hello, Adam. You've mentioned in your statement that the WECA will deliver protected cycle lines. You've mentioned A367. Can you exactly give what parts of the A367 this will be protected?
My understanding from the City Region Sustainable Transport Settlement is if you look at the map, I think on page 16, they actually highlight all the roads down to basically Radstock, and then back up to Bristol and Bath. So the A367, they want, because those are their bus transit corridors that they're developing, and those will be committed. They have committed as part of that development of those as major bus transit corridors to make them good for walking and cycling. So the most likely solution there will be probably a widening of a pavement to a 3-meter wide shared path, because that's allowed under LTM 120 regulation for rural areas. So you'll have this, so you will be able to cycle, an 8-year-old would be able to cycle from Radstock to Bath quite successfully.
Hey, Chair, can I have one more question, if that's possible?
All
Just a very quick one. So you mentioned that some of the pavements will be widened. Will this include Dunkerton Hill?
I hope so, yes, because it has to. Otherwise, these type of network routes are only as good as their weakest connection.
Okay.
I don't know whether or not. I mean, they have a serious amount of money, £540 million.
That's lovely. Thank you, Adam.
You're welcome.
Question, Councillor Moss.
Pass on to Grant Johnson.
Councillor Johnson.
Hi, Adam. Why do you feel that a climate emergency transport board would succeed when it could be argued that the council has taken action on climate emergency with delivery of livable neighbourhoods?
The problem here is I think when we come into election years, lots of parties want to pause and not do anything controversial. And I think if you look at councils like Oxford, where they basically use a cross-party working group to basically define their transport strategy, you get a consistent delivery. And we don't, and whether or not we like it or not, the government is giving year on year funding for these types of schemes. And we can't have this sort of, oh no, we're coming up to an election, we can't do this, or we'll have to choose. I mean, the choice of...
I think again that you have answered the question. We'll have to take it offline.
Okay, fair enough.
The next speaker is Saskia Diltiz. Sorry, I can't pronounce your surname correctly, but I think you know who I mean.
That's okay. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you. Saskia, over to you.
Hi everyone. I'm Saskia Heltjes, and I was recently appointed as the first bicycle mayor of Bath. I've used the bicycle to get from A to B in Bath for nearly 10 years now. Not much has changed on the roads in that time, apart from an increase in traffic and me becoming a mum of 2 children. I applied to become bicycle mayor of Bath and founded Critical Mass Bath because I see cycling as a non-polluting, cheap and easy way to get where I need to be. I also applied because I became frustrated by the lack of cycling infrastructure in Bath. You currently have to be a very confident person to cycle around Bath because there's not enough safe cycling infrastructure, and not any along key routes. The traffic-free paths we have along the river and the canal and to Bristol, they are fantastic, but they are mostly for leisure, not for getting to the shop, library or to friends. They're also unlit, so not useful after 4 p.m. in the winter. Sorry, just trying to get through my document. Whenever a motorist overtakes me and my children on a busy road, I fear for our lives. On most roads in Bath, we're not protected from fast-moving traffic, which is obviously very dangerous. This is not just about me and my family, though. It is about, sorry, I'm having trouble accessing my own document. So sorry. Let me get it up on my phone, just a second.
If you're okay, Chair, I've paused the time.
Got it, thank you. So this is not just about me and my family, it's also about my 60-something-year-old friend who cycles into town because walking is too painful on their joints. It's about the parents driving their children to the park to practice cycling because there are no safe spaces to cycle where they live. It's about the 13-year-old students cycling to Royal Balance School and having to experience closed passes every single day. It's about my colleague driving to work because they think they'd be too slow cycling up the hill and drivers would not give them enough space. It's about my other colleague looking for a cycling buddy to cycle from Bristol to Bath because the railway path is not lit. It's about the 17-year-old girl not allowed to cycle home from town in winter because the river path is not safe because it's unlit. So to reach the council's climate emergency
1 minute
targets,
remaining.
we need to reduce car miles by 25% by 2030. Cycling can play an important role in this alongside better provision for walking and public transport. Some good steps have already been taken to enable Bath to become a better place for walking and cycling in the future, but not much actual change has happened yet, and I'm concerned not enough will happen in the next 2 years. I very much welcome the livable neighbourhoods and look forward to finding out more about the plans in the consultation. Livable neighbourhoods would be a good step in the right direction, but we also need safe cycling infrastructure along key routes. Enabling more people to cycle could address the climate emergency while improving quality of life for everyone. There's strong public support for urgent action on climate change. You have a mandate. Please be bold.
Thank you. Councillor Guy, do you have any questions?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I defer my question to Councillor Warren, please.
Councillor Warren?
Thank you, Saskia. Would you agree with me that the cycling mayor of Bath should engage with the council as the transport authority to achieve our mutual goal of better quality cycling provision for Bath and North East Somerset? And would you be willing to have a meeting with me?
Well, I politely declined your meeting invite because I said I would want to engage with the council and through democratic fora such as the Active Travel and Accessibility Forum and other platforms such as Livable Neighbourhoods consultations.
Okay. All right, thank you. You've answered the question. You will not meet with Councillor Warren. Thank you. Councillor Pritchard.
No factual questions, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Walker.
Thank you, Saskia, for your statement, but no factual questions.
Thank you. Councillor Moss.
No factual questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Saskia. We're moving on to Barbara Gordon, please. Barbara Gordon.
Thank you. Yes.
Barbara, good evening.
Thank you. Okay. Can I begin?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. So I'm here to ask you, please, to support the carbon tax motion that's before council today. In Glasgow, representatives from 197 countries made commitments to take action to keep global warming to no more than 1.5 degrees centigrade. However, independent scientific analysis reports that those commitments will see global temperatures increase by around 2.4 degrees centigrade by the end of the century. So the global south is expected to be most affected by climate change, but COP26 was dominated by voices from the developed countries, from the developed nations. So fossil fuel companies sent more than 500 delegates to the summit, whilst many indigenous people from nations most affected by climate change were not able to access the meetings in Glasgow. The commitments made in Glasgow are pledges that are not legally binding. It's clear that targets are not enough. Tough financial measures are needed to transform the economy. Economists widely agree that introducing a carbon price is the single most effective way for countries to reduce their emissions. We need a global carbon tax to increase the relative price of everything that releases carbon. All proceeds from the tax should be returned to citizens in a way that improves lives for everyone. A citizen's dividend, in fact, because climate justice can't be separated from social justice. It shouldn't be the poor that pay for this. A carbon tax will force companies and suppliers to find ways to reduce their carbon output, but in the meantime, the tax could be used to provide a much needed improvement to public transport and energy.
1 minute remaining.
Homes. COP26 has ended. Alex Sharma worked hard to accommodate the competing voices and interests in the final report, but it's widely recognised that the resulting agreement falls far short of what is needed. The COP will reconvene next year in Egypt, so this is an ongoing process and efforts must be ramped up in the meantime. The fossil fuel industries have the ear of the politicians. They're rich and powerful, and our government needs all of us to put pressure on them to act decisively. I'm concerned for the future of my children and grandchildren, and I urge you to support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gordon. Councillor Guy, do you have any factual questions, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Barbara, but no factual questions.
Thank you. Councillor Pritchard, do you have any factual questions, please?
No factual questions, but thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Walker, do you have
Thank
any
you, Barbara. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Barbara, for your statement, but no factual questions.
Thank you. And Councillor Moss, do you have any factual questions?
Yes, I do. Do you believe that carbon pricing with an enhanced emissions trading scheme is an adequate substitute for carbon tax?
No, I don't.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gordon. And we move to David Regwell next. I would inform you that Nicole Patel has now managed to rejoin us. His internet link is problematic, and we will take him after we've heard from David. Good evening, David. Where are you?
I'm here. Thank you, Chair. Just to say that I'm still very concerned about the West Riding Combined Authority. Just to remind everybody in the room as well that the Secretary of State has an elected mayor in the form of the West Riding Mayor, Dan Norris, and he's made it very clear that if we want transportation money, that it has to go via the West Riding Combined Authority. We see from the latest settlements, we got money in the west of England and the Bristol Bath City region, but the northeast of England, with no mayor, received no money from the Secretary of State branch chaps. So mayors are the game in town for transport. Transport authorities are moving to the region. So for those who want to set up boards in Bath, that's not what the Secretary of State has instructed Dan Norris to do. In fact, he's actually instructed him to set up a bus advisory board, a bus service advisory board, and also set up a passenger forum on a WECA basis. And that's where our problem now starts. At the moment, we have a consultation out for buses. I'm very, very concerned. Those include all the evening bus services in Bath, the Bath to Stroud service, the Radstock, Midsummer, Norton, Peasdown, St John evening and Sunday services, Keynsham town services, service to Southmead Hospital in Keynsham, and the list goes on, the Chew Valley. Now, today I checked with WECA to see how many members of the travelling public and Baines taxpayers and WECA taxpayers have actually taken part in the survey. How many thousand do you think? Well, I can tell you, when they think they're proud of it in WECA, and I'm not, 300 passengers filled in the survey for 110 routes, which are up for re-tender. I think this is not acceptable. I think Kevin Guy, as a member of the Transport Board for WECA and with North Somerset, needs to take this up with the mayor, and we need to extend this consultation to the 20th of December and make sure that we have copies of these consultation leaflets on the buses, in the bus station, in the libraries across the West Riding Combined Authority, and community centres, and anywhere else, Madam Chair, and everybody else you can think of to put the leaflets, because it's not acceptable for the people of Keynsham not to get consulted, or for the people of Chew Valley, or for the people of Bath.
1 minute remaining.
So that's the point I'd like to raise. So we need to move forward on this. On the railways, I just make the point, there's a South Western Railway conference. I hope Neil Butters or somebody's going on the 23rd. It's a Zoom conference. And I hope we can raise the issue of the Bristol Waterloo service. If we have to look at connections at Salisbury, we need to look at that. So I'd really hope we can pick that one up. And the Secretary of State is in the region tonight, and there will be an announcement tomorrow about rail plans. Let's just hope that WECA and the Western Gateway Transport Board have their act together, so we go forward. I just welcome the conversation with Dina. I'm very prepared to go out and talk about taxis and look at the towns, the city centre with regards to the security zones, but remind people finally that young people don't have access to blue badges. So we've got to find a way of young people being able to get into the city centre by taxi, other than just by blue badges. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, David, Mr. Redwell. Councillor Guy, do you have any factual questions?
Thank you, Madam Chair. As there was a direct request from Adam, I would just like to confirm that I would be more than willing to ask the regional mayor for an extension on that consultation, Madam Chair. But I have no factual questions for Adam.
Thank you very much. Councillor Pritchard.
Yes, glad to hear you mention the Chew Valley on 2 occasions, David, but no factual questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Walker, do you have any factual questions?
I have no factual questions, but I'd like to thank David for raising the points about the survey and the lack of responses. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Moss, do you have any factual questions?
Hi, David. Thanks for the statement, but no factual questions.
Thank you. Thank you, David. And finally, last but by no means least, we have Nicole Patel. Patel, are you here now?
I am. Can you see me, Chair?
Ah, yes. Good evening.
Okay, thank you. All of us know the enormity of the crises we're in. We've all read the IPCC summary reports, the Committee for Climate Change reports, and our own 2019 Bath Nest report. And Liberal Democrats, as the lead party, have declared their commitment to climate and nature emergency motions. In February 2020, the Policy Development and Scrutiny Panel made the following recommendation. The word emergency suggests a different pace to business as usual. We must merit the word emergency in the pace of our work. Earlier this month, a deputy leader wrote, "We need a step change in public transport provision and affordability and in infrastructure for walking and cycling." Last week, the previous week, they quoted the National Audit Commission's July report. There are serious weaknesses in central government's approach to working with local authorities on decarbonisation, a lack of clarity over roles, piecemeal funding, and diffuse accountabilities. In June 2019, the then administration began an ambitious programme to update policies to enable, empower, and critically not obstruct officers in delivering policy. This council was, for 2 years, the envy of the country. Its administration and officers praised for their clarity of thought, leadership, and urgent action. And despite the pressures of COVID, it offered the council an unprecedented opportunity to bring about and embed the behaviour changes needed for genuine sustainability. Indeed, the deputy leader wrote this month, "We have seen during COVID that when people understand the threat and have clear leadership, they will comply with huge constraints on what were previously considered rights." 2 years in, everything changed. In June, a new administration swept out those acting on climate and nature. They ripped out the work of officers and councillors, set aside the clear democratic mandate seeking, instead, one-to-one behind the door deals that ignored consensus to favour minority interests. Without irony, they now call for the same clarity, clear funding stream and accountability they've just rejected. The active travel schemes that promise the behaviour changes to enable people to use their cars less and move more sustainably. Contrasting the previous administration with an alarming lack of leadership, direction, and integrity to their electorate. They've chosen instead a path of politicking, blaming everyone else, deliberate delay as they appoint undemocratic citizens' juries sometime in the future, and appoint new senior officers instead of just acting now. I call on this council's elected officials, the opposition and Liberal Democrats that still believe in their duty to their community and desperately urgent action on climate and nature crisis, to hold this administration to account and to immediately create a cross-party climate.
All your remarks to an end, please.
To benefit the community, which this administration is clearly failing to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Patel. Councillor Guy, do you have any factual questions?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Vipul, would you say a citizens' jury is undemocratic?
Yes.
Interesting. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Pritchard, do you have any factual questions?
Nicole, thank you, but no factual questions.
Thank you. Councillor Walker, do you have any factual questions?
Madam Chair, no factual questions. Thank you very much.
Councillor Moss, do you have any factual questions?
Hi, Vipul. Do you believe that carbon pricing, which could include...
I'm sorry, Councillor Moss, I'm not going to allow that question because...
No, Madam Chair, this is a yes or no answer.
But it was not contained in Mr. Patel's statement.
It is, yes, because he's talking about carbon tax.
No, he didn't talk about carbon tax.
I think you are suppressing debate and you're suppressing my right to ask questions. It is not the chair or the administration's right to stop leaders of opposition groups from asking a question. I appreciate it's a yes or no answer, and I'm asking a question that will give a yes or no answer. If you choose to say I'm not allowed to do that, then clearly we have a constitutional review, and I will bring that up there. And I will also be bringing it up in other fora. I think you're being unfair, Lisa.
Right, Councillor Moss, factual questions must pertain to the statement that was made by the speaker. And if you have, up to my knowledge, now Mr. Patel may say he did mention carbon tax. I was listening carefully. I don't believe he did. Mr. Patel, did you mention carbon tax?
I did not.
No, so he did not mention carbon tax, and therefore a factual question that was related to carbon tax is not related to his statement.
So can I just clarify then that other group leaders can ask other statements, can ask two questions, both of which were neither for a yes or no answer. I'm not allowed to ask a question that gives a yes or no answer.
Well,
is that where we are, Lisa?
Could you refer to me in the correct manner, please, Councillor Moss?
Okay, Councillor O'Brien, Madam Chair or Madam Chairman, please can you clarify how you'd like to be addressed? I think we've quite cleared up where democracy is within this current meeting, so I don't think it's necessary for me to go on any longer. Thank you.
I think you should have a discussion with Michael Hewitt, who perhaps will clarify the position for you. Right. Thank you, Mr. Patel. Could I ask all speakers now to sign off from Zoom, and if they choose to continue watching council, this informal council, please will you continue to do so on YouTube. Thank you. We move on to agenda item 8, the Constitution refresh. Councillor Guy, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm aware this is a very long meeting. This is the usual Constitution refreshed. I will just move the recommendations that are set out and look forward to hearing back from the learned colleagues that will be on that committee in May. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Walker, could you please, would you like to second this motion?
I'm happy to second the Constitution refresh and the update of proposed changes 2.1, 2.2 and 2.3 as in the document in front of us.
Thank you. Does anyone, can you please use the chat mechanism or MIS if you wish to speak? Councillor Moss, I see you are using hand. I request that you didn't do so, but on this occasion, if you have something you wish to say, please do go ahead. Oh, you've used MIS. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Moss.
Thank you. I think not so much a refresh that this council constitution needs as a total overhaul. If what we're seeing this evening is anything to go by. I think the right of councillors and the right of groups and the right of backbench councillors to use council to speak is absolutely essential. We do have a system of governance for local authorities that is now executive and pushes many of us onto the margins. I'd also say that part of the refreshers as well, or the revamp or whatever, is later on this evening. Once again, we're seeing a motion being put forward to council. And it seems to be that the administration can, in effect, delete all and swap apples for pears. We need to have to be restating that this council, this council meeting is the opportunity for backbench councillors and members, councillors who aren't part of the administration to have their say. And for where councillors organised into political groups have the opportunity again to have their say. Sadly, I think over the last, as a Baines councillor for coming on for 12 years now, and before that I was a Bristol City councillor, Baines had a reputation when I moved across here for having open debate across political parties and the opportunity to speak. Sadly, that appears to be disappearing, and certainly has been disappearing over the next 6 months. So I think notice, if you like, from the Labour group is that we will be participating in this refresh. I have to say we're more in hope than optimism, given recent events, but we will certainly be putting our points forward about how this council should be operating. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any other requests to speak. Now, Councillor Guy, would you like to sum up, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I take on board Robin's point. I think it's really important that these constitutional reviews are cross-party, and it's nothing to do with the actual administration themselves. So I look forward to having the opinion of this cross-party review brought back to the council to decide, and it will be the council that decides, not the administration. So I hope that reassures Robin in some way. Thank you, Madam Chair. I so move.
Okay, thank you. On the basis that it would appear that most of you will support this report, can I first of all, in voting, are there any councillors who wish to vote against? Would you please indicate in the chat, please? Any councillors wishing to vote against this proposal? Are there any who wish to abstain? No, then it is passed. Thank you. Then move on to the next item, amendments to the Constitution, proportionality. And again, I invite Councillor Guy to move recommendation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm happy to move this item, which updates the allocation of places on committees for each political group. The Lib Dem group will be reallocating one place on the Children and Adults Health and Wellbeing Committee. I move recommendation 2.1 and invite Democratic Services to liaise with the non-aligned councillors following the meeting to fill said vacancies. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Can I have a seconder, Councillor Pritchard?
Yes, I'm happy to second this, and the Conservative group will be removing a position from the corporate audit panel.
Thank you. Does anyone wish to speak on this matter? I don't see any requests in the chat. Anyone wishing to speak? No. Can I call upon Councillor Guy to sum up then again, please?
No further comments, Madam Chair. I so move.
Thank you. Again, are there any councillors who wish to vote against this amendment? Any that wish to abstain? No, amendments are carried. Thank you. Moving to agenda item 10, the Avon Pension Fund annual report. Can I invite Councillor Crossley, please, to move the recommendations? Councillor Crossley.
Thank you very much. It gives me great pleasure to present the annual report to Council from the Avon Pension Fund for the year to 31 March 2021. During the last 12 months, I'm pleased to say that the fund has maintained a high level of service to over 125,000 members and over 450 employers, despite working remotely. A huge thank you is due from all of us who are in the pension fund to our staff, who have worked so effectively over these last 18 months of pandemic. Key highlights include: 1, a 17% return on our assets equivalent to 834 million, which has eroded most of the deficit. This means the fund is approaching 100% funding level. 2, our equity portfolio saw a 22% year-on-year reduction in its carbon intensity during 2020. This means we've achieved our target to be 30% less carbon intensive than our benchmark 2 years early. Work which involved payments to members was prioritised, e.g. retirements and deaths, and electronic processes and communications fast-tracked, e.g. member portals and identity verification. Challenges. Particular challenges during this period were the recruitment and training of staff, the well-being of staff, and ensuring they had the right equipment to work remotely. Committee focus in this current year. A, review of the administration strategy and focus will be on full digital transformation of services. Good governance review, including knowledge and training of committee and pension board members. And finally, review of equity portfolios to increase alignment with Paris Agreement goals. COP26 conference has created a great interest in pensions and their roles in addressing climate change. And many of you will have received emails asking about the Avon Pension Fund and its role in this great debate and challenges we are all now facing. The Avon Pension Fund has been working hard in recent years to combat carbon emissions and has recently adopted 2 new decarbonisation objectives, which will see it reduce its absolute emissions by 43% by 2025 and 69% by 2030, which will set the fund in good stead to achieve its net zero goal by 2050. In October, the fund made a significant decision to realign its equities portfolio, moving 575 million to a Paris-aligned fund designed to divert capital away from carbon-intensive sectors and companies, but reward those that are well positioned to achieve transition to net zero. Specifically, this new fund, which launched in 2020, will halve the carbon emission generated by standard equity funds, systematically reduce carbon emissions by 7% each year in line with the 2050 net zero trajectory, exclude investments in the highest emitting companies and sectors, including coal and tar sands companies and companies whose primary business function relates to the exploration, extraction or distribution of oil, increase investments in companies generating green revenues, limit the number of banking stocks we invest in, a move designed to restrict the amount of capital channeled into the fossil fuel industry, exclude tobacco producers, controversial weapons manufacturers, and companies that have been identified as breaching the UN Global Compact. Additional, to accelerate its response to climate change, the fund has agreed to divest over 280 million from emerging market companies, which will produce an immediate reduction of fund emissions by 28%, excepting where wholesale policy shifts are more difficult to achieve. The proceeds will instead be invested in a broad range of climate and environmental solutions providers, as well as companies that contribute to social sustainability. Whilst decarbonisation represents a route to net zero, it is essential to make large-scale investments in new technology to enable effective transitions to a low-carbon world. The fund's 380 million commitment to renewable infrastructure has and continues to enable investment in traditional forms of renewable energy, solar and wind, as new technology such as biomass. These latest steps represent a continuation of the fund's ongoing strategy to manage climate change impacts as it seeks to balance the need to generate an investment return with setting ambitious yet credible carbon reduction targets. I've got quite a bit more, Chair, and if it's okay with you, what I will do is I'll put the whole speech into the minutes, if that is acceptable to you, so that I can wind up and stay on schedule. So to conclude, I'd like to move the recommendations as printed in 2.1, 2.2 and 2.3.
Thank you, Councillor Crossley. I have no objection to you putting the full speech unless Joe Morrison has, but I would think that that's acceptable. Joe, do I have a nod?
We don't normally minute speeches in council minutes, so
okay,
but, I mean, we could do a link to it or something. I don't know.
Yeah, what I'll do is I'll send the whole speech, which contains a lot about the carbon thing. I'll send it to you, Joe, if I may, and you can circulate it.
Sure.
To all councillors.
Absolutely, yeah, we'll do. Thanks.
Right, thank you. I call now Councillor Stevenson-McCall to second the motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm very encouraged that the commitments have been made at COP as a step in the right direction. And Avon Pension Fund welcomes that, because we believe we are living through a climate emergency and action needs to be taken now. And that is reflected in the actions that Councillor Crosley, as the chair of Avon Pension Fund, has alluded to. We have moved a lot of our equities, £500 million, to a Paris-aligned fund, which will ultimately see us reduce our carbon emissions by 7% each year, in line with the 2050 net zero trajectory. We are investing £380 million in a commitment for renewable energy, and we will continue to invest in traditional and emerging forms of renewable energy to ensure that we have the energy supplies for the future. We do want to ensure that we decarbonise our pension fund, and we will reduce our absolute emissions by 43% by 2025 and by 69% by 2030. Our scheme is our scheme members, our current workers who are paying into the fund, are very interested in what we are doing to manage the climate risk within our fund. And over the last 6 months, we have increased our communications with members by utilising social media and connecting with our members directly. This month saw the first launch of our ESG members survey, and we've had nearly 3,000 responses already, which will be used to inform our future strategy on the climate emergency. COP26 has succeeded in raising people's awareness of the issues around the climate emergency, and we in Avon Pension Fund will play our part in ensuring that we remain as critical as ever with the companies that we invest in to ensure they embark on a net zero trajectory, so that together we will encourage companies to ensure that they make their contribution to ensure that we reduce the warming of this planet to less than 1.5 degrees. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. I call on Councillor May, who wishes to speak.
Thank you, Chair. I very much support this report, and I think it really is great credit to everybody. We've mentioned our staff, but it's also the professionals that we work with. And bearing in mind that, of course, it's not just Baines. We actually organise the pension fund arrangement in Avon, but it does include at the meetings advisors. We have South Gloucestershire, Bristol, North Somerset, and universities all represented with those advisors. So that helps make sure that we're actually dealing with this in a sensible way. A lot of talk about climate and investment in climate, but we use an investment company, Brunel, and they've actually done an excellent job when it would have been very easy after COVID for things to go really badly wrong, but the marketplace has caught up really well. And I think it's a great credit to everybody in the organisations that have actually got us to the point where we can approve this tonight. So thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Ray. Are there any other councillors wishing to speak? No, I call on Councillor Crossley to sum up then, please.
Thank you very much, colleagues. And as has been said, our pension is, we have a lot of people. We have 450 employers in our pension scheme, and we manage it for the whole of the former Avon, which is why I call the Avon Pension Fund. But as has been pointed out, we've got some very good professionals who have been with us for a long time. We've got very committed committee members that have been around for a long time, plus we have members from across the Avon Fund. So it's a very robust policy. And the fact that we're now nearly 100% funded, I think is something of real credit to our staff and our advisors and this council for the way it's handled and managed this fund over the lifetime of Bath and North East Somerset Council. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Crossley. Can I have any councillors who wish to vote against adoption of this report? Are there any who wish to abstain? No, then the report is, thank you. We move on to item 11, the Standards Committee Annual Report. I call on Councillor Hounsell to move this. Councillor Hounsell.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. We all subscribe to the Nolan principles for those in public life: selflessness, integrity, objectivity, accountability, openness, honesty, and leadership. These were published at the end of May in 1995, over 26 years ago. Standards and the code of conduct are about ethical behaviour in our work as councillors and following the rules of conduct which are clearly set out. The Standards Committee fulfills an important role for Bath and North East Somerset Council and for the parish and town councils in our area. Dr. Axel Palmer, the independent chair of the Standards Committee, I and the other committee members would like to thank Michael Hewitt, the monitoring officer, and all the team that serves the Standards Committee for their work preparing this annual report and its statistics. There is significant public concern in maintaining standards. Bath and North East Somerset Council continues to champion and demonstrate the highest standards of ethical behaviour. I invite councillors to adopt the annual report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hounsell. Councillor Davis, would you like to second this?
Yes, thank you very much. And I second the words that Councillor Hounsell has said and recommend that we do adopt this report. As he said, the independent members, town and parish councillors work alongside the Baines councillors and our officers to make sure that our standards are maintained, and I fully second the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Councillor Jackson, you wish to speak?
Yeah, thank you very much, Madam Chair. I just wanted to draw members' attention to the service given by the late Tony Crouch, who was a Labour Party member, but who gave sterling service over many years to this committee. And I can say this because I was a member of the committee from 2007 to I think 2015. I think it's, looking at this report, which seems rather slim if you don't know a lot what's behind it, I think it's very easy to underestimate the amount of commitment that the members of the panel show, whether they're independent members, parish council members, and Baines council members. And of course, it is the bringing together of these three elements which makes this committee so effective. So I'd like to say thank you to all the committee members, and so would members of my group. And I hope that we will adopt it without any query, because as has just been said, it is more important than ever in this day and age to uphold the highest standards in public life and service. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Councillor Hounsell, would you like to, are there anyone else? Is there anyone else who'd like to speak? No, could you like to sum up, Councillor Hounsell, please?
Right, I endorse Councillor Jackson's remarks and would have nothing more to add and would like us to move to the vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any councillor who wishes to vote against adoption of this report? Is there any councillor who wishes to abstain on the report? No, then the report is carried. Thank you. The Treasury Management Performance Report, item 12. Invite Councillor Samuel to move the recommendations. Councillor Samuel.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, Council will know that this report is the regular quarterly report on financial activity, which is measured against the prudential indicators approved by Council itself alongside the 21-2 budget earlier this year. Those indicators follow the SIPFA framework, and they're designed to give assurance to Council that financial practices we follow are prudent and insulate the Council from risk. Now, this report covers the period to the end of Q2, ending 30th of September, and the highlights I would draw out of the report are as follows. On returns, the average return on our investments currently sits at 0.27%, above the benchmark of minus 0.1%. And the cash total of these returns equates to £105,000. The return in the main is inflated by the 3.4% return we are achieving on the investment in the local authority property fund. On borrowings, those stand at 226.4 million, as detailed in Appendix 4 to the report. And members will note the repayment of a £15 million short-term loan taken out in 2021 as a hedge against cash flow liquidity during the early stages of the pandemic. On strategic decisions, members will note the spread of investments. Those are set out in paragraph 3.10. And I particularly highlight the placing of £5 million with the Lloyds Sustainability Deposit Fund under the new ESG policy, which seeks to move the council away from less environmentally positive investment. In relation to the ESG investment, I ask members to note the progress we are making in this area in moving away from fossil fuel depleting reliant funds. Now, this is a trend which I predict will gather increasing pace in coming years as the value of fossil fuels falls in the market. And you've heard from Councillor Crossley that the pension fund has been looking in a similar way. Details on these headlines are contained within the appendices to the report. I'd like to finish by thanking officers for the work they've done on bringing this report forward, and in particular, the development work on the ESG funds, which at times has been quite challenging. So, Madam Chair, I move the recommendations set out in the report at paras 2.1 and 2.2.
Thank you, Councillor Samuel. I call on Councillor Elliott to second the report. Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As Chair of the Corporate Audit Committee, I'd like to add my thanks for the hard work of the officers in managing our investments in what continue to be unpredictable times. Whilst Treasury management can seem quite a dry topic, a sound and successful investment policy is the bedrock on which a sound financial governance of the Council is based. I'm delighted to see that by every reasonable measure, our Treasury management has been successful and effective, and that for every month of this financial year so far, the Council's investments have outperformed our benchmark rate. We're well within our borrowing limits. We've maintained a AA+ average credit rating across our portfolio. Our exposure to liquidity risk is very low. We're well within our interest rate exposure limits. The structure of the maturities on our investments means our refinancing risk is low, and we're well within our limits for funds being tied up long term, meaning our risk of losses due to needing to seek early repayment on investments is also low. All in all, every indicator shows that we have an effective Treasury management strategy which is well executed, meaning the Council's financial foundations are sound. I'd also like to echo Councillor Samuel's noting and delight in the approval of, for the first time for this Council, the ESG fund investment, with 5 million being split across two funds focused on investment in the operation, funding, construction, generation and supply of clean energy globally and in the UK renewable energy and infrastructure markets. It's vital the Council uses its not inconsiderable Treasury funds to contribute towards the Council's climate emergency goals, and I hope to see more of this in the future. I'm pleased to second the motion to note the Treasury Management Report and the Treasury Management Indicators to 30th of September 2021.
Thank you, Councillor Elliott. Councillor Stevens, you wish to speak?
Thank you much, Chair. I'll just keep it very brief. As Vice Chair of Avon Pension Fund, we know that Bath and North East Somerset is our administering authority, and therefore we follow the Treasury management system of Bath and North East Somerset. So we welcome the moves of the Council to create these ESG funds for its Treasury management investments in the short term, because we in Avon Pension Fund will benefit from that, and together we can work together to combat the climate emergency. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other councillors wishing to speak? No, so I go back to Councillor Samuel to sum up, please.
Nothing further to add, Madam Chair. Just move to the vote, please.
Thank you. Right, those who wish to oppose this report, please vote now. Any against? Any Councillors wishing to abstain? No, the motion is carried. Thank you. As we're making fairly good time, it is now 7:36. I think we will proceed to the next agenda item at least. We go to the corporate parenting referral from PDS. Councillor Pritchard.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. I will be quite curt over my reason for bringing this paper to Council this evening. It's in response to a unanimous request from the Children and Adults Overview and Scrutiny panel. The members of that panel feel that because this paper came before them, it would be better that the whole council see the content of that paper and use it as a reminder that all members of this council, all 59 members, are corporate parenting, and in that they have that direct responsibility. So what the idea is to quietly encourage members to attend the corporate panel meetings. Now, you can imagine that if we had a full complement of members to that meeting, that would be informed to the children themselves that so many adults had come and have that responsibility toward them and are demonstrating that. Currently, there are 183 children and 194 care leavers. So these are substantive numbers of young people that we have as individuals direct responsibility from. And it would enthuse those children if they knew that there were adults that took real interest in their well-being and their futures. So it's to encourage members to attend those meetings. It will be on the 7th of December at 5:30, the next one, so that you are aware of it. I understand that we all and each and every one of us have considerable amount of responsibilities, but if you could make time for this, it would be not only appreciated by the kids themselves, but it would be appreciated by the dedicated workforce that we have, and it would be a fine endorsement to them. So I encourage you to attend when you can. Certainly, Ms. Hardman, in seconding this motion, will expand on some of the services that they engage in, particularly effective. And you should be extremely proud of what the kids themselves have achieved and the staff that are encouraging to go forward. So I'll stop there for a moment, Madam Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pritchard. Councillor Hardman, would you like to second this, please?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to second this motion, which outlines the effectiveness of our local authority in meeting its safeguarding responsibilities and the progress of my children in care and care leavers. And as Vic has said, it's a reminder for us that we as councillors, when elected, take on the role of corporate parent to look after children and care leavers within Baines. So I'm going to say a little bit more about the report. It assures us that as a local authority, we are meeting the needs of our corporate parenting responsibilities. There is a high level of care which our looked after children receive. The stability rate of placements is good. The participation of children in decision-making is given priority, and all children have a social worker, where the rates of stability for these social workers is also very good indeed, which is unusual in these days. The virtual school does an exceptional job with our children, and there have been some outstanding academic achievements, and attendance rates are also very good. And very importantly, there have been no permanent exclusions over the past few years. However, this report is very honest in highlighting areas for improvement. It's important that children are placed within the geographical area of the family home. And I'm sure you've noticed in this report, due to the lack of sufficient foster carers, 69% of our children are placed more than 20 miles from Baines. But there are measures to try to improve this. For example, there is an allowance review coupled with a focus on retention and recruitment. Also, we have a higher than average percentage of our care leavers not in employment, education and training, called NEETs. about 33%. Again, measures are in place to improve these figures, such as a skills and engagement worker has been appointed, and there's a monthly clinic for those needs. So as councillors, this report can assure our responsibilities as corporate parents is being met, thanks to the excellent work of the in-care team. Vic has said why we wanted this report to come before the council, so that you are made aware of what exactly is happening for our looked after children and care leavers, and the fact that very few of our councillors attend corporate parent meetings. So reading a report like this has given you some very important information about our looked after children and our care leavers. I'd like to say a really big thank you to the in-care team. They do a tremendous job, and especially to the virtual school, which also does an absolutely fantastic job. And like Vic, I'd like to say to you, do come along to the next corporate parent evening and meeting. It is in the evening. It is at 5:30 on December the 7th. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hardman. I assume from what you say, the meeting is live. Where does it take place, please? Or is it by Zoom?
I think Dino can remind me, and Vic, but it is Zoom. It is at the moment, corporate parenting meetings are Zoom. So information will be sent out in due course as to what the password and codes are, etc.
Thank you. Councillor Romero, you wish to speak, please?
Yes, thank you. Yes, so at the moment, the next corporate parenting meeting is planned to be on Zoom. I just wanted to say how delighted that I am that this paper is here at full council. As you are aware, corporate parenting is every councillor's responsibility. That means you are responsible for 183 looked after children. And I don't think as a council we make enough of this responsibility. And if there is a move from PDS to bring more regular papers on corporate parenting to full council, I would support this, but also would encourage those that can to attend our corporate parenting meetings. It is important to remember that our role as corporate parents is not about numbers, but it is about children and young people as individuals. And that is why we must always focus on that aspect, despite reports such as this being full of percentages and X or Y numbers. Having said that, I think it is good to read how well our looked after children are doing, and to hear more about what happens once they leave care, including being in training, becoming apprentices, starting or at various stages of degrees, and also graduating. I hope, even anonymised as it has to be, that this, amongst so much more, gives you all a sense of pride in our looked after children. We have some great initiatives, such as the recent marketing campaign for new foster families, also fostering families, carers, which support children at the edges of care to remain at home and to prevent them ending up as looked after children. Finally, I would like to end on a thank you to all of our officers, especially Rachel Ward, for all their efforts to make sure that looked after children in our care are not just a number. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Romero. Councillor Jackson, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to, I would endorse everything that Councillor Romero, Councillor Hardman and Councillor Pritchard have said. I'm afraid I'm one of those who's not managed to get to very many of the meetings just by coincidence of having other commitments at the time, but it really is important. As they said, we did have some training on the whole aspect a few years ago, and I was just wondering if that could be repeated, updated, offered again. And secondly, there is a proposal in Parliament at the moment, because in other authorities, less blessed than ours with committed social workers, there's been a terrible hemorrhage of social workers, to award all social workers a winter payment or loyalty payment of £1,000 each. I was wondering if the proposers of this report would think that this would be a good idea, even though I think it sounds as though we were fortunate to retain perhaps a reward payment of some description. I wonder what they think about that.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Councillor May.
Chair, thank you very much. I feel ashamed that I've actually missed several of these meetings, and I think it's important that we do feel that shame. We're talking about the most vulnerable people within our community. Vic mentioned that they were kids, but we actually stay with them right through into adulthoodness, if that's the right word. And I think it's important that we actually do see our responsibility more than perhaps some of us have been able to do in the past. So I very much support this proposal coming forward. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor May. Are there any other councillors wishing to speak? No, I return to Councillor Pritchard to sum up then, please. And perhaps
Well, it's an interesting, thank you, Madam Chairman. It's an interesting scenario about considering a retention bonus to our social workers. That might be something for the administration to consider. But what I will say is I can assure all members they'll find attending the corporate parenting panel a very rewarding experience. So I do hope and sincere that collectively those speakers that have spoken to the subject now have touched a nerve, and we'll get quite a considerable attendance next time round. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Pritchard. So are there any councillors who wish to vote against this vote recommendation? Are there any who wish to abstain? Then I would remind you that the next meeting is on the 7th of December at 5:30 p.m. and it's on Zoom, and therefore also that the motion is passed. As it is almost 10 to 8, I propose that we have a comfort break now for 10 minutes. Can you please turn off your camera and microphone and be back here to start promptly at 2000 yards, i.e. 8 o'clock. Thank you.
We're ready.
Everyone back, thank you very much. Let us continue. We move to agenda item 14, the Safety for Women update report. I hope have seen the additional recommendation which Councillor Romero seeks to introduce. I will just repeat that at the end before voting, but please, Councillor Romero, would you like to move?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this is an update report as requested by full council in July this year. I would like to start by thanking the very small team of officers who have worked hard to ensure this report would be at this meeting. The Women's Councillor Group were very aware that work on this type of initiative could very easily be delayed. As for any council, even outside of COVID times, there are continuous competing pressures on time and resource. I would like to emphasise that this report is not a statement of works completed, but an update on work in progress. More has happened recently, but not been included in the report, such as assurances of support from the Weka Mayor and also the Police and Crime Commissioner, and a new focus from the police on crimes such as drink spiking. But I won't dwell too much on this report, but I would like to now move an additional recommendation, which I believe has been circulated to all, and it's a request to the Chief Executive that a report is brought to Cabinet on the most effective corporate response to this report. This request becomes 2.2 of the recommendations, and I'd like to move this report, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Romero. Can I call on Councillor Walker to second this report?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Happy to second the recommendation 2.1 and to include 2.2. As Councillor Romero has just said, request that the Chief Executive be asked to bring forward a report to the Cabinet on the most effective corporate responses to this report. And also, I'd like to put thanks on the table for Councillor Dina Romero and Councillor Lisa O'Brien for championing this group of female elected councillors and bringing this to the forefront of about the safety of women in public spaces. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. I have Councillor Warrington. Councillor Warrington, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm delighted to support this. We've worked cross-party over the issue, and I'm grateful that this important report is brought to Council, and I'm pleased to note the progress that has been made since that original motion that we all passed 4 months ago. It's clear that this issue has been taken very seriously indeed. This is a work in progress, as both Councillor Romero and myself just mentioned, but getting further funding to support victims of domestic violence, successfully engaging with schools and the Police and Crime Commissioner, as well as submitting a bid to the Home Office's Safety of Women at Night Fund, are all positive steps that, with further attention, should make a real positive impact on the lives of women and other vulnerable individuals within BAMES. The fight for equal rights and fairness for women has a long and very proud history. Yet despite many successes, there is still evidently a lot of work to be done to ensure that women and girls and other more vulnerable members of our society feel safe in public places. And we're delighted to support this item. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Warrington. Councillor Samuel, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Madam Chair. I strongly support this, and I welcome the additional amendment to request that the Chief Executive examines this question. I think there are definitely opportunities to focus the Council's day-to-day spending on these issues, and a bit of thought about how we do that organisationally is something I'm sure the Chief Executive will give attention to. So I look forward to receiving that when it comes back and if it has any financial implications that we can deal with, I'm sure we will pick them up at that point. So I welcome what's been said.
Thank you, Councillor Samuel. That was encouraging. Councillor May.
Thank you, Chair. I also welcome this, and particularly the second recommendation. I'm thinking particularly that we employ lots of Virgin staff who are often out of hours dealing with the most vulnerable in our community, and also our children's social workers out of hours dealing with issues. So I think it really is not just a political matter, it's something that we should be dealing with as responsible employers. And I think it would be good to be picking up that wider picture as well in the working group. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor May. Are there any other councillors who wish to speak? No, I come back to Councillor Romero to sum up then, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd first of all like to very much welcome Councillor Samuel's focus on the budget implications. I think that is something that is important, and I'm sure that that will be highlighted in the next report that will come to Cabinet. I'd also like to thank Councillors Walker, Warrington and Councillor May for their very supportive comments. I'd also like to thank all the women councillors for their involvement, and lastly, but no means least, all councillors for their undoubted support. So thank you, and I have nothing further to add.
Thank you, Councillor Romero. Is there anyone who wishes to vote against this update report? Is there anyone who wishes to abstain? No, then the motion recommendations, including the recommendation 2.2, the executive be asked to bring forward a report to Cabinet on the most effective corporate response to this report is carried. Thank you. We move now to agenda item 15, the race panel update. I would just remind everyone that this agenda item is about the race panel update. It is not about the wider issue. And so I would ask you to contain your questions to the race panel update. Thank you. Councillor Romero.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is an update of the work over the last year from the race panel. It is important that Council recognises that this is a self-directed panel drawn from the community with lived experience of being black or brown or otherwise have expertise in this area. The work and the issues they are looking at are what the group wishes to examine and are not directed by the Council. We have welcomed a diverse range of contributors over the year to help shape our thinking, and have also made additional comments through to those bodies and indeed to others. The discussions we have had range from exploring ways to recognise important figures in, for example, the anti-slavery movement, reconsidering the history of our place to make it more fully inclusive, and giving advice to public health. It also has included a look at the work of other aligned groups, such as the Race Equality Task Force, which is developing Black Lives Matters themes and imperatives across schools in Bath and North East Somerset. In order to understand the work of the panel more completely, it is useful to refer to the panel's purpose and terms of reference. And so I would like to include a new 2.3, which asks the Council to note the panel's purpose and terms of reference. And I believe a link to this has been circulated to all. The main ask I have of this Council is that you allow the panel to continue to the end of the term of this administration. There are no significant costs to the Council, and I believe that there will only be good outcomes for our communities by continuing with this unique panel. Thank you. And so I move the recommendations as printed, as well as the new recommendation 2.3.
Thank you, Councillor Romero. Councillor Kumar, I believe you wish to second this motion, this recommendation.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm delighted to second this motion. Never lose an opportunity of seeing anything that is beautiful, so said Ralph Emerson. And I shall add, never lose an opportunity of public speaking. I have attended almost all the monthly meetings of this race panel and have benefited immensely. When this race panel was formed last year, some residents asked me the usefulness of this panel and whether council's funds were being vested in arranging these meetings. I'm delighted to say that there is almost, I repeat, almost no cost in arranging these meetings, and all the meetings are held virtually online. So we are taking care of our beautiful environment as well by not commuting to Guildhall or any other place. Hopefully, even in the normal world, when COVID perishes or subsides, we shall continue to Zoom. Race Equality Panel aims to tackle inequality, injustice, and discrimination in our society through the advancement of equity, fairness, and positive relationship in public organizations. If anybody thinks there is no discrimination or bully in Bath, I openly and humbly say you are wrong. The panel's remit includes, and we are also further broadening by discussing educational inequalities and achievements, employment and labor market inequalities, perhaps some hate crimes and preventing discrimination, health and well-being inequality. So the panel, I hope, will strengthen the voice of people from different backgrounds and ethnic minorities in shaping and influencing the policy development of our council, the decision and delivering
1 minute remaining.
Things in our beautiful town and the county. And I hope that not only the approval be granted for a further term of office of this panel till 30th of April 2023, but even beyond. Obviously, perhaps that will be not possible. So I would strongly request, humbly advise to all the members of the council to strongly support this motion and grant the approval till 30th of April 2023. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you, Councillor. I have Councillor Jackson, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I welcome this report, but I do have some concerns about paragraph 3.3. The first paragraph on the question, it's second bullet point actually, on the question of language, recalls to me an incident when I represented Radstock, and furious complaints were being made because the workers on the railway land development were speaking a foreign language, and everybody knew that it was part of the Section 106 agreement that local people should be employed to work on the site. And what were these people doing speaking this foreign language? They couldn't be local. Well, I made inquiries, and of course they weren't speaking Polish or Romanian or anything like that. They were speaking Welsh, and apparently Abergavenny was the nearest point where these skilled workers could be recruited from. So language is a very sensitive matter and very important, and I'm glad to see it here. However, carrying on with the other points, I am very disturbed just to see references to the city of Bath. Possibly the panel are not aware the distinguished role that members of the Windrush generation have played in the development of the economy in rural areas in the Somer Valley, particularly the black miners who stayed after the war. And also we have an important representation of Chinese citizens as well. So I would urge this panel to widen its view and consider rural areas where, of course, in fact, discrimination and the difficulties of a minority can be much more severe than in a city. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Councillor Pritchard.
Yes, I'm extremely sorry to say that I find this report very very disappointing, I think is probably the best way to say. We all expected, I think, in reality, a whole lot more of this, but this report tells us absolutely nothing. It makes comment on BME and BAME terminology as being unacceptable, but that's a government issue that has no locally we have no control over that. So it doesn't seem as though that it's achieved very much in the time that it's running. Now, Councillor Kumar gave a whole inventory of different considerations that I would have liked to have been part of the report. There's nothing there to colour the report to get us any enthusiasm that there's any progress being made. So if it is going to be extended for a further 16 months or some for that period, I hope to see a much more positive outcome and something that we can enthuse, not this vagueness. Councillor Kumar brought it to life, but I expect to see that in the report itself. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pritchard. Councillor May, please.
Thank you, Chair. I think the comments made all actually reflect the fact that the group needs to keep going. If it changes over time, then that's fine. The only point I would add again is the fact that we're a large employer, probably one of the largest employers in the area, and therefore we should be looking at our own approach to employment rules with regards to this, so that we are actually genuinely about equality as an employer. But I think, Chair, I think we really should be supporting this motion.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And I return to Councillor Romero to sum up, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to all those that have spoken as well. I think the important piece actually around the use of language, this is not my statement on the unease that some people feel when we use terms such as BME or Black and Asian minority, ethnic, as phrases. This is coming from people who are very much at the forefront. And so I think it is really important that we take people who are Black or Brown's opinions into account, which is not down to people who do not have those experiences to say how, which terms are appropriate or not. So I think it's actually it is a very useful body in terms of just that small detail. I totally take on board what you've said, Councillor Jackson, around the Black miners of North East Somerset, and certainly if we are allowed to continue the panel's work, North East Somerset will provide will be given a greater focus. We've already been having some talks about celebrating and creating more of a focus on our Chinese communities as well. And one last thing that I should bring to the council's attention: we are literally in the process of creating a more useful website and also social media as well. And so that will also be able to keep everybody up to date with what we are doing. It will, I think, highlight some of the other, perhaps slightly understated bits of work we do, which is signposting to other agencies and other groups that are also doing really good work as well. This group is not trying to do everything that is already being done, but to enhance and to amplify that work as well. So I will rest there, and I hope everybody will be able to support this paper. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Romero. I would just remind everyone that 2.3 has been added, which asks councillors to note the panel's purpose and terms of reference. So is there any councillor who wishes to vote against this recommendation? Is there any councillor who wishes to abstain? No, then that is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. We now move on to agenda item 16, first of our motions. And the first motion is proposed about carbon tax by Councillor Wright. So Councillor Wright, do you wish to propose?
Thank you, Councillor O'Brien. Roman Abramovich emits 34,000 tonnes of CO2 per year. Bill Gates emits 7,500 tonnes of CO2 per year. The average global footprint is presently 5 tonnes of CO2 per person per year. Preventing temperatures from rising above 1.5 Celsius requires that the average CO2 emissions should be no greater than 2 tonnes of CO2 per person per year. 52% of the CO2 added to the atmosphere between 1990 and 2015 was generated by the wealthiest 10% of the world's population, of which some, if not all of us, in this room are part. The problem for planet Earth is that this 10% are the major CO2 emitters, and if they are to play a role in combating the effects of climate change, then a new way of taxing CO2 emission needs to be put in place. A comprehensive carbon tax and a citizen's dividend is one of the few ways of bringing down CO2 emissions in a way that is equitable and fair for all. 35% of energy-related CO2 emissions are generated by 20 state-owned and multinational companies. Advocates of the free market would like us all to believe that these businesses now understand the climate change science and are willing to play a part in tackling it. The reason why major polluters love net zero targets at some distant time in the future is because it is a brilliant way of avoiding restricting emissions now. They continue to burn fossil fuels relentlessly, and no one is putting a price on this action. No industry or government is currently voluntarily agreeing to cease production. Every day we, humans, continue to emit CO2 into the atmosphere at a rate that is leading to catastrophic warming that will make the livelihoods of millions unsustainable. The scale of what is needed is politically uncomfortable. It is much easier to stick with our current behaviour than face up to the evidence that tells us that we need to change that behaviour now. Creating a new vision for how we all live on the earth in a way that uses less CO2 is essential to our survival. Taxing high CO2 polluters to fund the transition to a much more carbon neutral way of living for everyone and creating better public health, affordable public transport, improved housing and buildings is essential to that vision. The task of our political generation is to put this into action now. I therefore call on this council to support a comprehensive carbon tax as set out in the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Now we have an an amendment submitted by.
I think you need to have a seconder first, Councillor O'Brien.
That's correct. It needs to be seconded.
I do beg your pardon. I'm sorry, I do beg your pardon. Is there a seconder for this proposal?
Yes, there is. I'll second it, Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Councillor Moss. Thank you.
Okay.
So the motion is on the table. It's been proposed and seconded. Now there is amendment on the table from Councillor Warren.
I'm sorry, Councillor O'Brien. Are you stopping me speaking now? Usually people get time to say why they want to second the motion.
My understanding is that
Your understanding is I've got 3 minutes to second this motion. That's in the Constitution. Are you telling me I can't speak again?
Councillor O'Brien, it is correct that the seconder has 3 minutes to speak.
I do beg your pardon. Councillor Moss, go ahead.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Clearly, we're not on each other's Christmas card lists at the moment. I will briefly second this motion because I understand that an amendment is coming up, and I think most of my points will be addressed to that particular amendment. But I would like to just chuck a few facts into, or a few statistics into why this motion is important. And of course, we're just coming out of COP26, and it's been interesting to see what public opinion has said about the whole discussion of politicians and governments in relation to climate change. 34% of people in the UK believe that the main responsibility for environmental improvement, for making environmental change, lies with government, including ourselves in local government. 26% with individuals, 19% with businesses. And that probably reflects a degree of trust or a lack of trust in businesses to take on this responsibility. 55% of people believe that we cannot afford not to implement climate change, that we have no choice but to implement measures to combat climate change. But 72% of people believe that green products and green policies will be too expensive for those on a low income. And I think it's an important part of this particular motion that it actually addresses social justice and the way that we can make sure that those least well off can afford to be part of the process, as well as making sure that those who are polluting pay. But 13% of people believe that politicians aren't genuinely interested in climate change. They aren't genuinely interested in making a difference. And as local politicians, we have to stand up to that reality. And I'm afraid, I'm going to be substituting for Councillor Johnson at the next climate emergency panel, which is next week, which has one agenda item, which is the final strategy for planting trees. Clearly, the fact that only 13% of people believe that politicians are genuinely interested is probably a reflection of as much as us as anybody else. I think this is an important motion. I think it's an important statement.
Time is up, Councillor Moss.
And I hope that Council will support it.
Thank you, Councillor Moss. And my apology for getting the listing incorrect.
Thank you, Lisa.
So we had it proposed and seconded. There is now an amendment on the table from Councillor Warren. Councillor Wright, will you accept the amendment?
I believe, Councillor O'Brien, I have 3 minutes to speak on this. The title of the motion
I'm sorry.
No. I've checked with Democratic Services earlier in the day. I have 3 minutes to speak. The title of the motion states exactly what this motion is about, a carbon tax. The motion is about using a carbon tax to tax the highest emitters, that they have a just transition to zero carbon that can be reached. And money raised can be returned to citizens in ways that improves the lives for everyone. The Liberal Democratic amendment is not a minor change to the motion. It is a radically different offer, and it fails to understand the difference between a carbon tax and carbon pricing. Carbon pricing is totally inadequate and equates to carbon trading. Planet Earth does not need any more markets for creating greenhouse gases, which is what carbon trading will allow. What we need is leadership to deliver real change. What we need is a carbon tax. The carbon tax proposal was initiated by leading economists from around the world. They understand quite clearly the difference between a carbon tax and carbon pricing. Advocates of the free market have repeatedly used greenwashing terminology in a way that confuses the average person. It is very hard for many to understand words such as offsetting, net zero, carbon pricing, and carbon tax. What the Liberal Democrats offer in their changes to this Green Party motion is greenwashing. The Lib Dems began the week by asking this motion to be withdrawn. The amended motion radically alters the request to central government and to the conference of the parties, that is COP. Putting a price on the burning of fossil fuels by creating a carbon tax is an equitable way to deliver that change. Carbon pricing does not achieve this change.
Madam Chair, can we have a point of order, please?
As the sole Green Council of BAMES, I'm aware that the Lib Dems majority will at all times be able to veto any motion I put forward.
Right, will you stop talking for the moment and stop the time? Someone has raised a point of order. Who has raised the point of order, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. It seems that Councillor Wright seems to be talking about an amendment that hasn't yet been put forward by Councillor Warren. I believe the Councillor Wright is entitled to speak on the amendment, but only when that amendment has been put forward.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Guy. That was my understanding as well. I think you may have misinterpreted advice apparently given that suggested that you could make a speech before the amendment was proposed. So I ask again, are you prepared to accept this amendment or not?
I do not accept the amendments to this motion.
Right.
Sorry, Chair. I think what needs to happen here is that Councillor Warren hasn't actually had a chance to make her amendment yet.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I think she needs to make the amendment, and then Councillor Wright be asked whether she accepts that or not. So I think we need to go to Councillor Warren to make the amendment because it hasn't in effect happened yet. We know it's on its way, but.
Oh, Joe, also just in Councillor Wright's statement before, there was a point of inaccuracy. Am I allowed to correct that before I make my statement?
I think it would be simpler.
Yeah,
Sorry.
My understanding is the motion has been moved and seconded. There is now an amendment on the table. The mover of the original motion, currently substantive, has been asked whether she will accept the amendment or not. She has refused, and therefore my understanding is we now go to the mover of the amendment to propose the amendment.
I think
if the amendment hasn't been moved, how do we know?
Yeah, sorry, excuse, can I just, Michael, is that you? Do you want to come in?
Yes, Chair.
Yeah, okay.
We need to hear from the mover of the amendment, and then that needs to be seconded, but only if the original motion, the mover of the original motion doesn't accept the amendment. So the correct order is to hear from the person moving the amendment, and then ask Councillor Wright whether she accepts that amendment. If it doesn't, it needs to be seconded, and then you go into the debate.
Right, so Councillor Warren, would you like to move your amendment, please?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Wright, for bringing this motion, which I would emphasise I did not ask you to withdraw. I proposed joint working in the current weeks on. If this is an important topic in the week following a COP26 conference that demanded promises capable of capping global heating at 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial levels, but which in the end failed not only in this measure, but even to deliver an end to coal, the dirtiest fossil fuel. Governments will meet again next year with new promises, and what we should now be loudly demanding from the next COP is a clear end date to fossil fuel use and exploration along a clear pathway starting as soon as possible. Any lesser outcome will chime the death knell for billions. This council, despite missing £30 million due to COVID alone on top of 10 years of austerity cuts, and losing a year of progress to the pandemic, is delivering on its pledge to tackle the climate emergency. We have introduced the first charging clean air zone outside London. We are updating our planning policy to respond to the climate emergency, putting forward the first policy in the UK setting a target for embodied energy and true zero carbon, and facilitating construction of renewables installations. And we are updating our already nation-leading policy for energy in the historic environment. We are consulting on residents' parking with a view to charging dependent on engine emissions, developing high-quality cycle routes to begin construction in the coming months, and starting co-design of our first livable neighbourhoods. The West of England Combined Authority has been awarded £540 million over 5 years through the City Region Sustainable Transport Fund. We've amended our procurement policy to ensure the environmental impact of all council goods and services is considered. And you've already heard this evening about our pension fund and treasury management. We're running a grant scheme for home energy efficiency improvements in low-income households. We're building a passive house school and are retrofitting several council-owned buildings. I agree with earlier speakers. This council is not doing enough in the face of the environmental emergencies. No council could, but we are doing a huge amount given the constraints upon us. In terms of the motion before us, we propose to amend changing from specifying a carbon tax to the more generic term of carbon pricing, which could in practice be a tax. Because we are cautious of an additional regressive tax at a time when climate justice is needed, and because we leave the detailed design of the mechanism by which fossil fuels will be phased out to experts at the Treasury, I therefore move the amendment.
Thank you. And you have indicated, I believe, Councillor Wright, that you will not accept this amendment.
I believe I can speak for 3 minutes at this point, can't I, Councillor O'Brien?
No. If you don't accept the amendment, it needs to be seconded, and then you're able to speak after that.
No, I don't accept the amendment.
Right, thank you. Councillor Warren, do you have a seconder for the amendment, please?
Yes, I do. It's Councillor Singleton.
Councillor Singleton. And I believe you now can speak to second the amendment. Councillor Singleton, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm delighted to second the amendment. Whereas I commend Councillor Wright for this initiative, our amendment is necessary to put right some of the errors and inaccuracies, as well as impracticalities of our party's original text. Specifically, we have noted that COP26 actually took place this year rather than last, and we have removed exhortations to the government to act through COP26, as we believe that the prospects of achieving changes to the final communiqué at this late stage are limited. We have preferred the term carbon pricing to carbon tax, as expert opinion is divided on the merits of a tax or taxes versus a comprehensive emissions trading scheme. And we feel that those with the necessary data and expertise at the Treasury may make more effective calls on that than we can here at Baines. Likewise, the citizens' dividend concept, whilst perhaps superficially attractive, is fraught with complexity and scope for unintended consequences. So we call firmly for an equitable sharing of the burden so that those least able to pay are protected and benefit fully from whatever revenue upside may result. The degree of social and lifestyle change necessary to move from our current economic model, marinated in hydrocarbons, to one effectively free of them by mid-century will be unsettling and painful. In a democratic society, this will only be achieved by consent, and that consent will only come with a visible and total focus on social justice. So, as I say, Councillor Wright's initiative was very welcome. I was truly disappointed, though, and indeed sad, that she declined our invitation to work with us on a joint text, as I remember all too clearly the heady days of 2019, when all freshly elected, we spoke so much of shared values and what we achieved by working together on the climate emergency, the most important challenge humankind has ever faced. Together we could show vaulting ambition and stretch the bounds of the possible to lead the country by showing what could be achieved. The future of the planet and our place on it is quite simply too critical to be lost in a mire of personalities, arguments, and abuse. Now, if ever, is the time to stand up and show the character necessary to pursue the common good. So I invite you, Councillor Wright, challenge you even, to rise above any lingering resentments from the past, and let's rediscover the ambition that we once shared. Let's park our differences and reach out to achieve exceptional goals. As Glasgow so eloquently showed, our children's generation expect it of us, and what is more, they deserve it of us too. Thank you.
Thank you. I now open the amendment up to debate. Councillor Wright, you will have the opportunity to sum up later. I call Councillor Samuel first.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Sorry, excuse me. Sorry, Councillor Samuel. I think we might have missed in the chat. Robin Moss had indicated just before you, Richard.
That's fine.
Thank you. Thanks.
Right. Okay.
Thank you, Joe, for pointing that out. Not that I'm getting paranoid this evening. It's an interesting discussion about the difference between carbon pricing and carbon tax. I think it's interesting that both Alistair and Sarah, in moving and seconding the amendment, talk about leaving the judgments and the actual format to the experts at the Treasury. I think that shows a degree of I'm trying to be polite, a degree of, let's say, naivety or belief in the Treasury that I don't share. Although if both of them want to buy a very large bridge off me, I'm sure we can come to a reasonable price. I think there is different views on carbon tax and carbon pricing, because the World Bank says carbon pricing provides an economic signal to emitters, and clearly businesses do want the opportunity to trade carbon. They want opportunity to shift responsibility. And as I said earlier, the public opinion is that it's leadership from government and from politicians that is being looked for, not necessarily for business. I believe in pushing for a carbon tax, textual inaccuracies taken into account that we would be showing leadership. I think it's disappointing that we go for that we're pushing for carbon pricing. I think the whole amendment is disappointing. That said, the Labour group will be supporting the amended resolution as a small slice of cake rather than the whole cake. As I say, I think the administration, the Lib Dem administration, have missed an opportunity to take leadership at this point.
Thank you, Councillor Moss. Councillor Samuels.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, Councillor Wright, in putting forward this motion, did pose the right question. Unfortunately, she provided entirely the wrong answer. Council cannot possibly give approval to the main motion, littered as it is with errors, with its muddled arguments and propositions. Thus, the amendment proposed by my group seeks to correct these errors and propose a more pragmatic way forward. As I was intrigued by the origins of this motion, I did a bit of research today. And what I discovered was that the origins of the words in our motion before us tonight are ones that were set out by the Green Party in a press release on the 13th of October ahead of the COP. Sadly, its promoter today was unwilling or unable to bring it up to date. Now, the Greens' plan is very light on the practicalities of how a carbon tax would work. They appear not to understand that in a global economy, all countries have to impose such a tax, otherwise extra national competitiveness in trade is eroded. For goods produced in high-emitting countries such as India or China, in theory, it might be possible to calculate some form of carbon tariff applicable at the point of import, but it will be very difficult and bureaucratic to do and will require the cooperation of nation states, which seem to be lacking at the COP. In the reverse direction, exports would be, presumably under the Greens plan, be priced to fully reflect the externalities of carbon release. But a certain consequence of this in some market sectors will be the production of uncompetitive goods into the global market. The Greens do appear to acknowledge this flaw, but fudge the practicality of dealing with it. My strongest criticism, however, is reserved for the idea of the carbon dividend. And Councillor Wright has referenced the Economist statement on carbon dividends and the Green New Deal, which was published in the Wall Street Journal, promoted by the Climate Leadership Council, which incidentally I think is nearly all US economists. Any rapid examination of that statement shows it's far from agreed, and as with so many economic theories, is sharply contested.
1 minute remaining.
Thank you. In short, it is many years away from consensus and deliverability. Key criticisms are that it is regressively redistributive from business to consumers and is largely silent on what happens when the cash runs out. In their press statement, reproduced by Councillor Wright, it appears to me the Greens have invented the idea of progressive distribution of any dividend, as that was not what the group of economists proposed when they were advancing the idea of dividend payments to all citizens, not just those with the lowest incomes. So I do hope members will support our amendment because it seeks to recognise the philosophical issue whilst not trying to define the solution in the way the Greens have done. We all need to see global carbon reduction.
Could you bring your remarks to a close?
But I personally have to be convinced that this particular motion before us will advance that cause.
Thank you, Councillor Samuels. Councillor Hurst, please.
Thank you, Chair. Madam Chair, I wanted to address council members on the particular aspect of social justice, and in particular, the reading that I've done around carbon tax policy is that it would be a very regressive tax, and particularly in the UK, it would affect low-income families who would be hit the hardest. In terms of proportion of income, low-income families have a much higher proportion of their income is spent on electricity, heating, fuel, and food. And without the right safeguards around carbon taxing, we're going to be pushing people into food poverty, fuel poverty, and power poverty. So it's really important that we get what we propose has got the right safeguards, not to be having unintended consequences for our residents and low-income residents across the country. So I think what we've done in this amendment is try to tease that out a little bit, identify some key aspects of protection which would need to be built into what is quite a complicated tax policy to protect our poorest in our society. Without doubt, our climate deserves better, and we do need to deal with these issues without a doubt. But the motion that was proposed unamended does not address it. It's not a meaningful way forward, and the motion needs to be amended. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Hurst. Councillor McCabe, please.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to draw Councillor Wright's attention to her own words, where she said that we should be putting a price on carbon. Those are your words, and exactly. And the argument is, how do we put a price on carbon? Is it a tax or is it a trading scheme? And for all the reasons you have said, I agree personally that I favour a tax of some sort with some sort of safety net for the most vulnerable in society. But the whole point is that whoever chooses how we price carbon will no doubt be in government. And I'm slightly surprised by Councillor Moss's comments, because if it isn't Treasury, who else fixes a pricing scheme? So on those 2 points, I think we do need to accept the amendment, because the motion as it stands, as has been pointed out, is too full of holes. And I do regret that Councillor Wright didn't take the opportunity to come to a mutually agreed position beforehand. But I think the aims of the motion as amended will actually achieve what most of us, the majority of those of us here today, want. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McCabe. Councillor Walker, you are next on the list. Do you wish to speak to the amendment or the original motion?
Speak to the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead.
So actually, Joel's pinched most of my speech actually, but hey, I'll agree with what he said, most of it. Again, those people on income do buy secondhand goods that give off the worst carbons. Then again, they will suffer because of their heating costs, because a lot of them aren't working. So I will be supporting the amendment. There was in Joanna Wright's motion, there was no real evidence of how people on low income would benefit from carbon tax either. So I will be supporting this amendment tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. Councillor First.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Similar to what Councillor Samuel said, this really isn't, the original motion wasn't really a council issue. It's a national green policy issue, and it's grandstanding by the Green Party to this council to try to drive through some policies which do, and as there's some previous speakers have just said, which do and will affect some of the least well-off in our society the most. So I won't be supporting the main motion. I will be supporting the amendment on that basis. But the question also is that, are we doing enough? Now, we are, as Councillor Warren said, we are working hard to make sure new homes are of the right sufficient insulation quality. You know, we need to do more about our heritage homes within the centre of Bath on glazing, double glazing and insulation. But there are some other wins that we should be working harder on. I do believe that we can be dealing with some of the easy wins nearer to home rather than this national grandstanding. And that's things like dealing with space heaters. In our, we more and more people, and we license tables and chairs in our public realm. And during this time of year, in the last month or so, loads and loads of space heaters have been installed. Now, they may only be a small percentage, a minuscule amount of carbon and heat being released into the atmosphere, but it's all in the wrong direction. It's something that we should be banning. We should have the power to ban, and we should be working vigorously to ban them, because they just seem wrong, like diesel generators in our streets when there's roadworks going on. You know, we should be looking at much more environmentally positive solutions to some of these easy wins rather than this national grandstanding. So I leave it there, Madam Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor First. Are there any other councillors who wish to speak on the amendment? No, then I invite Councillor Wright, who is the original mover of the motion, to sum up.
Do I not get an opportunity to sum up?
Can I just point out at this point, Councillor Wright has the opportunity to respond to the debate on the amendment, and then we move to the vote. If it's carried, then we'll go on from there, if that's okay, Chair.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for confirming that, Michael. Councillor Wright, you have the opportunity as the mover of the original motion to sum up in the amendment.
Thank you, Councillor O'Brien. It is so good to hear so much debate on this very important topic. What is important to everyone and quite clear is that the most vulnerable sections of our society need to really be considered. And that is why the carbon tax really considers that process. I would raise with you some clear things that we know that at least 40% of people don't have access to private vehicles, and that one of the things that could have been done recently in Bath and North East Somerset is putting a bus gate on North Road to allow children to get to and from school, to not put car parking on the Upper Bristol Road where they're now putting 6 parking spaces on a cycle lane. Sorry, my battery is very low. And sorry, apologies, my battery is about to die. Literally. Recently, I had an email from a local resident wanting to put solar panels and having to put having to spend £200 on planning permission to do that on a roof that isn't even in an area of conservation. We have much to do and much to change. And that is why thinking about things in a different way is really important. I am aware that the Liberal Democrats did approach me, but it was quite clear that it was to delay the motion and put it back to some other council meeting at some later date. It wasn't to do this now. There was clear mandate from many people in the local population at a climate emergency walk and march recently in Bath, in which I saw many Liberal Democrats, which the clear term was act now. We need leadership today. So as a sole Green councillor at Baines, I am aware that the Lib Dem majority will at all times be able to veto any motion I put forward. The need for political parties to cooperate to achieve the changes that need to happen does not seem to be forthcoming. I do not accept the amendments to this motion, but they will be passed, so I will be pragmatic about dealing with the consequences and will continue to advocate for a carbon tax, because that is not about carbon trading and that is what is fair for all. Thank you. I'm going to go and get my lead to make sure I hear the rest of this debate. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. We now move to the vote.
No, I need an opportunity to sum up, don't I?
No, we do move to the vote on the amendment. If the amendment is carried, then it's open for further debate, or okay, thank you.
Thank you. Right, so this is obviously a little bit more difficult to judge. I will assume that the motion, there will be more councillors voting for the amendment than against the amendment. So I will start by asking, no, I'm going to change that. There will be more councillors voting against the amendment than for the amendment. So can I have any councillors voting against the amendment, please? So voting against the amendment. I have 5 votes against the amendment so far.
That's correct, Chair.
Are there any other councillors wishing to vote against? Are there any councillors wishing to abstain against this motion? Councillors wishing to abstain, you must use, I'm sorry, Councillor Hale, you must use the chat, please. We've got a few more now.
I make that 10 abstentions and 6 Against.
Just going to check that.
Just response to Councillor Jackson. No, I've noted that. So 6 against and 10 abstentions. Thank you.
Yes, you're correct. Therefore, the amendment is carried, and that now becomes the substantive. And so we are open to debate further if you wish on the substantive. Are there any other councillors who wish to speak on the amendment, which is now the substantive? Right, Councillor Walker has said go to the vote.
Sorry, that's not correct, Chair. Councillor Warren has the opportunity to speak in summing up.
Yeah, I was going to say, and also the Councillor Wright, as the mover of the original motion, has the right to debate before asking the mover of the substantive motion to sum up. So, Councillor Wright, do you have anything further? This is on the order of your papers.
Chair, had there been further debate, then Councillor Wright could have responded to it. But as there hasn't been further debate, it's for Councillor Warren to sum up.
Okay, shall I go ahead?
Yeah.
I'd like to start by saying to Councillor Wright that I think it's a real shame that you have declined our offer made in good faith to collaborate cross-party to reach real consensus on such an important issue. You had the opportunity to contribute to a mutually agreed motion, and I would encourage you and your associates who have similar environmental objectives to ourselves to accept such offers from the administration going forward. As for the debate this evening, we've heard about billionaire emitters who would simply buy their way out of reducing their emissions under a carbon tax. We've heard that the original motion contained errors and that the ideas it contained are contested. We've heard from several members that carbon taxes are regressive and would hit low-income families hard, particularly in the UK. We all know this council has no powers over national tax raising and no powers to raise a local carbon tax. We're councillors, not MPs or tax experts, writing letters to a government who are happy to grace a stage in Glasgow and talk the talk, but rarely walk the walk on climate, will likely deliver no tangible difference to the UK's carbon emissions. However, we will, of course, write demanding greater ambition from government in the form of a stronger framework of carbon pricing, because it is right to do so, and I propose we move to the vote.
Before we do so, thank you, Councillor Warren. Councillor Jackson has raised a point of order. Councillor Jackson, what is your point of order, please?
My point of order is that it's quite out of place in a debate in a full council meeting of Baines to make such personal attacks on another councillor. That her views may not be acceptable to the proposer of the substantive, but I don't think that's any excuse for the kind of vilification that's been going on. And I would be grateful if you would rule it out of order.
I go to Michael to rule on this, please.
Chair, at the end of the day, this is a debate, and I don't necessarily consider what was said was particularly aggressive against a named councillor, but it is for you to determine ultimately as chair whether or not you want to make any comment upon it.
Thank you, Michael. I share Michael's view. I was not aware of anything that was totally innately personal. others have made personal statements tonight. Should Councillor Wright wish to make a complaint, of course, we have a complaints procedure, and should she wish to do so, then she should make a complaint through the formal process. So we will now move to the vote, and this is on the substantive, the amendment which is now the substantive. So could I have, first of all, votes against the revised substantive, please? I'm not picking up any votes at the moment. Can we have any votes against this motion, please? Okay, so there are no votes against the motion. Are there any abstentions, please?
That's 10 votes, 10 abstentions, Chair.
Thank you very much, Joe. Therefore, the motion is carried. Thank you. Okay, right. The next item on the agenda, item 17, that motion has been withdrawn. So we move to the next agenda item, is 18, the Queen's Platinum Jubilee. I invite Councillor Warrington to move the recommendations, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I'm pleased to move this motion. On February the 6th, 1952, Queen Elizabeth II ascended to the throne. As the country emerged from the rubble of the Second World War and the devastation, the new monarch offered hope for a brighter future. In the 7 decades since, as cultural trends, new technologies, and even prime ministers have come and gone, she's remained a constant source of strength and focus for all of us. Excuse me. Next June, the nation will come together over a 4-day bank holiday weekend to celebrate the Queen's 70-year reign. It will be the first time that any British monarch has reached this historic milestone, and indeed, Her Majesty is one of the longest serving monarchs in the world. Celebrations will no doubt take place right across the country, including right here in Bath and North East Somerset. We are therefore proposing this motion tonight as a suitable way of celebrating this incredible anniversary, of recognising the long and dedicated service of Her Majesty, and of giving our residents the chance to directly participate in what will be an historic occasion. So I'd like to move the motion that is printed on the papers. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Warrington. I call on Councillor Ball to second the motion, please.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Councillor Warrington has made a very eloquent speech there, which I endorse entirely. It has to be remembered in 973, King Edgar was first coronated at Bath Abbey. In 1973, Queen Elizabeth visited Bath to celebrate 1,000 years of monarchy, a huge historic occasion. In 2002, under Councillor Curran's chairmanship of the council, Queen Elizabeth also visited Bath again, attended the Guildhall and visited the pump rooms and other establishments in the area. This area has a long link with monarchy itself. The Queen's own son, Edward, is Chancellor of Bath University at the moment. So we have a huge link with monarchy across this area. And I'm actually delighted to second the motion this evening.
Thank you, Councillor Ball. There seemed to have been some interference. I hope everyone could hear what you had to say. Okay, I have Councillor Wood who wishes to speak, please.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say, as relevant Cabinet member, happy to support this motion and also note the local heritage we have in the area of naming streets and buildings after the monarchy.
Thank you, Councillor Wood. Councillor Jackson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As a Republican, I'm not keen to spend a great deal of council taxpayers' money on this celebration, but I know my residents in Westfield are going to greatly enjoy the huge party which Westfield Parish Council is going to throw on the West Hill Miners Trust ground on the appropriate date. So representing my residents rather than my personal views, can I make a very practical suggestion? We already have a Queen's Square. Why don't we just make it Queen Elizabeth Square? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Right, is there anyone else wishing to speak? No, then we will go back to Councillor Warrington to sum up, please.
So I'm pleased that the speakers have supported the motion. I completely understand where Councillor Jackson is coming from, but with regard to the naming, Queen Square is a historic item, so and it's named after an historic queen rather than Queen Elizabeth. So we might want to think about that. But I so move the motion, and I'm pleased that there is some support. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Warrington. So first of all, can I have any votes against this motion, please? Any votes against the motion? Any abstentions? No, then the motion is carried. Thank you. Right, we move to our final motion, which is a motion on the impact of fireworks. And I would just identify that in addition to the motion in your papers, Councillor has added an additional recommendation, number 9, that says, following the support of this and the previous Labour motion, this council directs the administration to report back to full council in May 2022 as to the actions that they have taken to that date, and then report back to full council in late September 2022 as to the completion of the 4 resolutions of the council above. So over. Yeah. Councillor Hale. Councillor Hale, are you?
Yes, it's okay. Yes, I'm more interesting when I unmute myself. Well, I think so anyway. Straightforward motion that I trust we can all support. It responds to a number of emails received from constituents who show significant animal.
Councillor Hale, you keep breaking up, so perhaps you can stay, take your video off and speak very closely to the microphone, please.
You want the video off?
Well, anything that will give us continuous speech from you would be appreciated. Yeah.
Right, let's try that then. Okay, shall I start the time again?
Yes, please.
This is a very simple and straightforward motion that I trust we can all support. It is in response to a number of emails received from constituents who show significant concern to animal welfare, whilst fireworks are being used in the open air locally, and also for the welfare and mental well-being of those in our community who are vulnerable. Now, many of you might have a feeling that you've seen this or similar motion before. Well, on November 12th last year, we as a council gave our support to a motion sponsored by the Labour group. So you may ask, why are we now moving a similar motion? Well, to the best of my knowledge, nothing has changed since last year from a council perspective. It is able to show clearly just what has been done, and of course, I would even if that information is forthcoming this evening, I would still like to support in passing this motion so that those who we represent will recognise that as a council we share their concerns and are continuing. It is important to stress that this is not a killjoy motion. We're not seeking to ban fireworks in their entirety. We are seeking to have fireworks displays announced in advance so that people can be aware and prepare for them. We're seeking to actively promote a public awareness campaign about the impact of fire and the welfare of vulnerable people. We are seeking to lobby in writing the local government association, seeking them to lobby government for a limit to the maximum noise level for fireworks to 90 decibels for those sold to the public for private displays.
1 minute remains.
And we finally to encourage local suppliers of fireworks to stock quieter fireworks for public display. I trust that we will all feel able to support this motion in taking forward what Labour started. And finally, as the chair has read out, I think it's not unreasonable that we also ask the administration to report back to a full council in May of 2022 as to the actions that have been taken to that date in relation to what I hope we're all going to support, and also then to report back to full council in late September 2022 as to the completion of the 4 resolutions of the council as above, as printed on your order paper, which again I hope that you will support. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Hale. I believe we have a seconder in Councillor May. Councillor May.
Thank you, Chair. I didn't know whether I should declare an interest right at the start because I've got 2 rescue dogs from Romania and they are absolutely terrified by fireworks. And under those circumstances, I think it's clear that there's enjoyment for young people with fireworks, but there's also the impact on the greater good of other people. I think the motion last year by Councillor Johnson was excellent, and I think it's really sad that in a way that we have to bring forward this motion this evening, and I think it's right that we should be actually, before the next 5th of November, pursuing some practical things as a council, that what we can do and what we can't do, and I think only the officers can actually give us that advice in May of next year. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor May. Right, I have Councillor Johnson. Councillor Johnson, please, to speak.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. When I first read that Councillor Hale was bringing a motion to Council on fireworks, I wondered if he had missed the motion that I brought to Council last year on this very subject. Thankfully, that's been cleared up now. But however, despite drawing similarities with that motion, he does highlight the need for the Council to actually act on it, as it is something I'm sure all of us get complaints about each year. It is worth pointing out that as most displays are put on to make a profit for our local hosteleries and for the happiness of residents who attend, we often forget to challenge those that organise them. This year, I worked with the organiser of the Porton Rovers display, which they have every year, and asked for the noise from the fireworks to be reduced due to complaints from residents. After the display took place, I was actually amazed to receive an email of thanks, which highlighted the difference that one of my residents felt this had made on all the previous years. So it just goes to show the impact that we all have in our wards and the effect from displays that so many people enjoy. So I would urge all councillors to act in their communities to highlight the relatively small changes we can all make to reduce the impact of fireworks. I don't agree with the timeline Councillor Hale has proposed, as surely after November 2022 would be a more appropriate time. That being said, I gladly support this motion.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Johnson. There are other people on the list. But I have just received notification that an amendment has been put forward. So we need to debate that amendment or hear about it before we proceed with any other speeches. Who is wishing to propose the amendment, please?
I am, Chair.
Yeah. Councillor Samuels, could you tell us what your amendment is, please?
So, Madam Chair, the amendment is simply to remove the words that were circulated at very late notice this afternoon. This is unnecessary to add these words. The council is a body that sets the policy for the council. It does not monitor the actions of the executive, and this is an executive responsibility. So, on that principle alone, we are moving the removal of those words. But having said that, my group gives assurance to Councillor Hale that we will fulfil the actions, if they're approved by council, set out in 5 to 8 in the report. But we feel that the addition of the additional requirements to report to council are inappropriate and unnecessary. And in any event, the May meeting of council is the AGM, and we would not normally receive business were this to be agreed anyway. So, but I think it's an important principle that the role of the cabinet, the executive, political executive and officers stands outside the ability of the council to monitor it. So we are proposing the removal of those words that were circulated at 4:30 this afternoon.
Okay, thank you. Do you have a seconder to support your amendment, please?
I think Councillor Rigby.
Yes, Chair, and in the interest of time, I will just say that I am happy to second Councillor Samuel's amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Rigby. Councillor Hale, are you prepared to accept this amendment, please?
Could I just ask that Councillor Samuels repeat what he just said? Did I hear him say that the administration does take on board and will ensure that what's in the motion will actually come to pass in the hands of the administration? Could I just have clarity from that, please?
Would you like to clarify, Councillor Samuel?
If council approves this motion tonight, then we will follow the recommendations set out. So yes, Councillor Hale, we will.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Samuels, and thank you, Chair. Having had that public undertaking, which I'm sure will be minuted, then I'm happy. I wasn't going to withdraw the other 2 points, but I have to accept your word for it. I have no reason to doubt your word, Councillor Samuels. As I say, it's minuted, it's in the public domain. So I look forward to seeing all of this come to pass. If it doesn't, I'll probably remind you of it.
Okay, so the amendment is accepted, and I conclude by Joe's honest writing that Councillor Samuel's word will be minuted. Is that correct? Yes.
Yes, I can make sure that is included in the notes. Yes, thanks.
I think that would make Councillor Hale happy. So we have an amendment now, which now removes the two additional points that Councillor Hale wished to make. We now then have Councillor Walker.
So I'm speaking on behalf of the independent group. We support the motion that Councillor Hale has put on the table, but we would have liked to have seen further steps taken to discourage the sale of fireworks to the general public. So that was our comments from the independent group.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. Councillor Warrington.
Yes, I would like to obviously support this this motion. I think it's really important that I make a few points. I do live in an area where there are houses that are quite close together. I'm not, I don't think anybody on this council can accuse me of being a person of nervous disposition, but I've had fireworks going up and exploding on the top of my house, and I have actually leapt out of my seat. So the points I'd like to make is it's not just animals, which are pretty key. And in my area, I have a badger set about 20 metres from my house. All animals are impacted to a greater or lesser degree. Also, I think there is a pollution issue here. I don't know, every single firework night, I get a huge amount of rubbish from these fireworks in my garden as well. And I think the most important point is it's not just animals that suffer. A lot of people in a vulnerable category will be frightened about loud bangs. And I have actually got residents who've said to me that their children suffer very, very badly because of the noise as well. So, I mean, I would like to see residential fireworks banned, but clearly that's a national issue. I would like to see organised. I don't want to be, I don't want to stop anybody's fun, but we have got a climate and nature emergency. And this is a small part that can help towards that as well. And when people do little things, lots of people do little things, that will impact. So I support this motion. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Warrington. Councillor Samuel, presumably you have said what you wish to say. Is that correct?
All I would add is that we agree the sentiment and purpose behind this proposal, and we'd like to see it put to the vote.
Thank you. Councillor Jackson.
Thank you very much, Chair. Councillor Warrington has anticipated a bit of what I wanted to say. And I have an interest because I am an asthma sufferer, and it's always much worse after the air pollution caused by fireworks from the big displays around me. However, I wanted also to draw attention to post-traumatic stress disorder. I had a friend who had survived the Blitz, but he was always completely spooked on bonfire night because the bangs and the flashes recalled what he'd endured as a teenager and narrowly survived. And of course, we have living among us veterans who've survived horrible ordeals in Iraq and Afghanistan. So lowering the volume of these fireworks, I think, is really important. And I'm very happy to support the resolution.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Councillor Moss. Councillor Moss.
Thank you. Yes, yeah, thank you, Councillor Bryan. I just wanted to pick up on Richard's amendment, which removing those 2 points, and I think similar to Alan Hale, I've got no reason, I certainly don't, question that what you say about reporting back to council will happen, and that will come about. But I think the point you're making, and please correct me, Richard, if I'm wrong, is that the council has no powers to monitor the executive. And I have to say, it's probably a discussion for the Constitution Working Group, but I actually really disagree with that. I think that the council is the sovereign body of as the collection of elected representatives. We clearly do have the principle of monitoring and holding the executive account, certainly through the scrutiny process that can ultimately report back to council meetings. And while I certainly wouldn't question the honesty of the current administration in sticking to its word in reporting back, what you're saying is that we're minuting this as a council. We're noting it. We've got it on a record, but that makes absolutely no difference at all, because this council does not have the right to monitor the executive. And I think that is very worrying. I think it's something that we need to be looking at within the constitutional arrangements as far as we can, because there may well be administrations in the future that are less scrupulous and stick less to their words. And yeah, be happy to vote for this motion, because I'm not arguing about the rights and wrongs of fireworks. But I thought your statement, Richard, and the way you outlined the roles and responsibilities is, as I say, worrying.
Thank you, Councillor Moss. Are there any, Councillor Samuel would like to make a point of personal explanation? Councillor Samuel?
Yes, I think Councillor Moss may have misunderstood what I said. The law sets out what are reserved executive matters, and it sets out what is left to council to decide. That's not an issue, that's not something that the council alone has decided. It is following the provisions for executive arrangements in all local authorities. And the point is that council meeting as council sets the policy framework, the financial framework, and it is for the cabinet, the executive, to operate within the framework set by council. The council does not act, in my view, and the monitoring officer may amplify this, council does not act as a monitor on the executive's actions. That's a slightly more subtle point, but I think Martin Hewitt may be able to explain that better than I have.
Yes, Chair. Just to point out, if we look at page 175 of the papers where agenda item 19 is set out, there are standard wording on motions, and it says at the bottom, unless were specifically set out in the statute, motions approved at council do not bind the executive, but may influence their decisions. Now, that's on a relatively recent case in Leicestershire, where the court decided that that was the position. Council motions, unless it was to do with the power and function of council, did not bind the executive.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Samuel, for that explanation, and thank you also to Michael. There being no further speakers, as the amendment was accepted by Councillor Hale, you have the right to sum up.
Thank you, Chair. It does all sound terribly worrying when it's sort of put into words as to what the executive can do and what they can't do, or what we can do about what they can do and what they don't do. And again, I accept Councillor Samuels's words, his original words. I was a little bit worried about, now I've moved the page, sentiment and purpose. That sounds a bit more relaxed than, yes, we'll make sure it happens. But I'm sure he didn't mean to mislead me. So again, thank you for the support, or I hope the support everybody's going to give us. And I trust that the executive won't make me ask the question when it comes to September, November time, because they will announce what they've done and they will have done what we've agreed to tonight, I'm sure. So thank you very much, folks. I won't detain you anymore, because for the last 10 days of isolation, I've been in bed by 10 o'clock. So it's moving in that direction rapidly.
We still have 24 minutes to go, Councillor Hale. Thank you very much. As there are no further speakers, we move to the vote. We've summed up. Are there any councillors who wish to vote against this motion? Are there any councillors who wish to abstain on the motion? No, the motion is then carried. Thank you. Finally, agenda item 20, we have a statement from Councillor Jackson. Councillor Jackson.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. It seemed to me that in the last debate we got into deep philosophical water, which will doubtless be paddling around in for some time, but I would like to turn your attention to the Standing Advisory Council on Religious Education, which is popularly known as SACRE. It's perhaps one of the more obscure council committees, but like the Planning Committee, it is a statutory body required by law, and its functions are regulated by government. It is not quorate without the presence of council representatives, one of which I've had the privilege of being since 2015. Jesus said, "And the first shall be last, and the last shall be first." We have debated weighty and important matters tonight, but the last item, to me, this one, is the most important. The values and beliefs and visions which should undergird our conduct as councillors and our personal lives need to be learnt and communicated. And the new RE syllabus, which the council is about to adopt, is crucial for doing this. Following the decision of Cabinet last week to accept the new syllabus, I hope that there will be no delay in fastening a signature to it and implementing it. I also hope that SACRE will receive the full sum that it needs to function in the Council's upcoming budget. Some of you may be drifting away for cocoa and night prayers. Others may have been saying a prayer to get an important motion through, like the carbon tax motion or the measures to prevent domestic violence. But I hope that all understand how important spirituality and prayer are. Tolerance, empathy, selflessness, and kindness are among the principles expounded in the syllabus and, of course, are embedded in our code of conduct. Some members here may have had very negative experience of RE in schools. The syllabus is an important tool for raising standards, but I hope there will be sufficient money in the budget to allow SACRE to offer training to RE teachers, as we have done on how to teach the Holocaust, or on combating Islamophobia, to get training ourselves at national and regional levels, and to monitor our schools. One issue noted in our annual report, which can be made available to councillors, is how many schools are failing to advertise the rights of parents since 1944 to withdraw their children from RE and school assemblies. We monitor this and school websites in general, so please don't withdraw yourselves. With rising intolerance, tribalism, and extremism, we need RE so that children value diversity, explore their own beliefs, and appreciate the underlying values which hold society together. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Councillor Guy, do you have any factual questions, please?
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and thank you, Councillor Jackson, for that, but no factual questions.
Thank you. Councillor Pritchard, do you have any factual questions, please?
No, I don't, but I do enjoy Eleanor's presentations to us.
Thank you. Councillor Walker, do you have any factual questions?
No, I don't, but thank you, Eleanor.
Thank you. Councillor Moss, do you have any factual questions?
I'm certainly not brave enough to question Eleanor, so I'll just keep quiet.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Councillor Jackson. And there we have got to 9:40, so we have actually finished the council 10 minutes early. Thank you to all councillors. I apologise again for getting the order slightly wrong on one of the motions. I hope you'll forgive me, and we look forward to next